Yo, what's up guys? We talk a lot on this channel about MMOs and ARPGs, but the very first video I ever made 5 years ago was about a game called Raft. This is a survival game where you're on a one-piece square of raft, and it's a survival game where you have to slowly progress the story. And that is a type of game I adore. I think that game was a masterpiece. So when I heard there was a new game that just released called Voidtrain, which has almost the exact gameplay loop, gameplay style, but you're on a train flying through space, I had to try it. And I've been playing this a ton over the last couple of days. It's an indie game on Steam, but it's also free on the Game Pass if you have that. So let's go over a quick review of the game, what it's about, and if it's worth getting into. So what is Voidtrain and why am I talking about it? It is a new indie game from a company called Hype Train Digital, and it just had its full 1.0 official release, like the full game is now out. And basically, this plays similar to Raft. So if you've played that, you're already going to know the basics, the gameplay loop, but you start out on a single square wagon and you are floating through space on these train tracks that just go on forever. And you're in like a procedurally generated void just flying through space. Along the way you're going through on this train, you have to do a few things. You have to gather all of the things around you. You're like chained to the train and you can like float out into space and collect things. You have to then slowly learn new technology, and that technology starts out like making a garden to make some food on there. You get different crafting stations and like smelters, and you start processing things better, and then you make like into armory, and you make armor and different weapons and things like that. And along the way you're also grading your train, so you're going to make your train like longer. You're going to, bodies, armor, you're going to add like a ram at the front and some turrets on the front, things like that. And the reason you're doing all this is because as you're progressing through and you're making your train faster and stronger, you're going to hit these depots, these like places of interest. And when you get there, it's tied to the story, but they are just filled with enemies. These enemies will attack your train. They'll attack you directly. They'll also pull up alongside you while you're riding in the void. So you've got to be prepared and you've got to keep advancing to keep along with the story and keep along with the pace of the things around you, which is a really exciting concept, and it keeps the game interesting even if you're not really feeling the story. On top of this, you're also collecting these creatures. So every time you hit a depot, there is a chance to find creatures, and these creatures can be taken on board your ship, given housing there, and they can get jobs. So you assign them work based on their traits. Like one could be a train driver, one could be like put on a certain workstation to make it do things more efficiently. So you're constantly growing your train and getting these workers that will work for you and gather for you. And that's always the hook for me with these games, the progression, where you start out with nothing, just collecting things by hand, to the point where, a day later, you have this giant armored train, all these workers going out and collecting things for you, all these things that are now fully automated, and you can focus on like the harder stuff or playing the game. Okay, so that's how the game works. Now let's talk a little bit about the story, the narrative, and kind of the progression. So the way it works is the Void has a set length, and you're going through this 3-chapter campaign, and the Void has like a certain length to it. And the faster you're trained, the faster you'll get through this piece of void. When you get to the end of this void, you'll hit a depot. The depots are a place to re-gear, a place to fight new mobs, and they're a place to advance the story. You'll also find a creature every time you get to one of these depots, so you will grow your ship's capacity of creatures, and you get more and more of these little creatures on board, and they'll do different jobs. Now, as the story progresses, it'll help you unlock certain technologies, and your ship will get bigger. You'll get new things and new items that will help you on your adventures. And then once you've done everything at the depot, you leave and you go into the next big patch of void. And that's kind of the progression. You go through a big piece of void, hit a depot, bit more story, new creature, new enemies, and so on and so on. The story itself, I won't ruin it. I didn't think it was anything special. It was enough to keep me interested. It had a very humorous element to it. It was a little bit of laughs, a little bit of serious story, and then you're back to the game. It's enough to keep you on the track, so to speak. But it didn't wow me, and I wasn't really excited for more. But it was enough to get through the game. I don't think the story is the strongest point, but I didn't have any real problems with it. It starts out fairly simple, as you're attacked by these people and they think you're someone else, and then you follow that cookie trail of who, and you're following that story, and it opens up into a much bigger story with lots of different things involved. And I can definitely see lots of people who would really enjoy this. It just didn't really hit for me. Now, even though the story wasn't super gripping, the need to progression, the want to progress was always there, because every time you hit the end of the void and you hit the next depot, you would get a new creature, which is awesome because that means the ability of things you can do, the amount of things you can automate, the extra gatherers, things like that all go up. And the depot is the only place you can make big changes to your train. So adding a new engine, adding a new wagon, adding new armor, things like that. So as you're progressing and getting resources and upgrading your technology through the void, you then save all of that up for a big upgrade at the end, which felt really, really rewarding. Okay, and I've talked about like enemies and combat a few times, so let's get into that. So you start out with a revolver, a slow firing basic revolver, and you use that to defend yourself in the void. There are creatures and monsters in the void that will attack you, and you defend yourself. You can also use it to like break apart rocks and things like that. And then as you progress, you will unlock a armory table, a smelter, things like that. And what you can do is as you defeat enemies, you can take weapon parts. You can get these from like chests, depots, and you can take enemy guns and fully break them down. So if a gun is made up of, say, 6 parts, you can fully break that down into the 6 parts and remake different weapons with it, which is a really, really awesome system. You can start out with like a machine gun and fully turn it into like a pump action, like short range shotgun, which is really, really cool. And I think that's a system they did incredibly well. The only place I would say it falls off is I never felt fully like the combat evolved. My ability evolved a lot. You know, I got better at the gunplay and my gear got better. You can have like better armor. You can put armor plates in your armor, great bandages, more health food. You can upgrade your ship. So I ended up with like this fully armored train with like turrets on the front, had workers in the turrets. So you felt like you were getting really, really strong. But then the enemies never seemed to progress along at the same pace. There were some cool enemies, like some enemies would have like a Gatling gun, or like some would be like super armored, or you had these waves of creatures you could do and bosses. And there was a lot of like really cool stuff. But I don't know if it was the AI or if they just didn't have enough enemy types, but it never felt like it evolved through the campaign. That's just my take though, but maybe you'll find it much more challenging and you might hit a wall certain way through, but it didn't feel like that to me. Overall, I'd say it's satisfying enough, and it was enough to keep the game going, but it probably wasn't a strong point. I wouldn't play this for the combat. So overall, should you play Voidtrain? And I would say this 100% depends on the type of game you're looking for. If you're looking for a looter shooter, no, there are better out there. If you're looking for a really awesome story about some space adventure, I don't think this hits the mark. I think there are much better space RPGs out there that tell a much better story with much better characters. However, if you are looking for a survival and crafting game experience different to everything else that you've seen before, you know, go hit a tree, build a campfire, build a hut, you know, the same sort of, you know, gather a crafter type thing we've done 100 times before, this is that different thing. It's very similar to Raft if you've played that, and it hits the exact same, you know, enjoyment that does with a different gameplay loop. Where Raft was open world and just fully open and you're just riding around in this big vast open ocean, this is more linear. You're linear on a track going through the void from station to station, which some people will enjoy more because it's less overwhelming. I thought it was really well paced. I thought you were never doing one thing too much. I never felt like I was grinding too much for the progression, fighting too much, gathering too much. I never felt like one thing was tying me down too much, and I felt like the whole game was really well balanced, that you got to do a bit of everything and everything progressed at a really good pace. If you are looking for a game like that, if you're looking for a survival crafting game that's a little bit different, this is 1000% worth playing. I really, really enjoyed it. Was this worth, you know, was it £25 on Steam, free on the Game Pass? 1000%. You can get like 40 to 50 hours of really enjoyable gameplay here at an indie price. So I would definitely recommend this if you like that sort of gameplay. But that's it from me. A little bit different than the usual videos. If you like this style of thing, let me know. Maybe I'll do more. But thanks for watching. Take care. Subscribe if you want to see more. And I'll catch you on the next one.